I still remember the day I moved into that house, number 93. It was at the very end of Maple Street, a quiet little suburban cul-de-sac, the kind of place where nothing ever happens, where nothing is supposed to happen. The rent was so cheap, I should have known something was off, but I was desperate for a place, you know? And it looked perfect from the outside, a quaint little two-story with faded blue siding and white trim, overgrown rose bushes in the front yard, a creaky porch swing. It had character, I told myself. The landlord, Mr. Simmons, he couldn't get me to sign the lease fast enough. His pen was in my hand before I'd even finished the walkthrough. "When can you move in?" he kept asking over and over. "Tomorrow, today." There was an eagerness in his eyes that made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. I was just being paranoid, right? Wrong. So very, very wrong. The first sign that something wasn't right came when I tried introducing myself to the neighbors. I baked cookies, my grandmother's recipe, and went door to door. But every single person I talked to, they all said the same thing. There is no house number 93 on Maple Street. I laughed it off at first. Clearly there was some kind of mix-up with the street numbers, I thought. But then I met Mrs. Abernathy at number 91. Sweet old lady, probably in her 80s. When I mentioned living next door in 93, her face went white as a sheet. She grabbed my arm, her bony fingers digging in. "There is no 93, dear," she whispered. Then she pointed a trembling finger at my house. "That lot's been empty since the fire." I felt a chill run down my spine. What fire? I'd seen no signs of any fire damage. The house looked old, sure, but intact. I hurried home, my mind racing. That night, I scoured the internet for any information about my new address. Property records, news articles about a fire, anything. But there was nothing. It was like the house didn't exist, had never existed. I tried to push my unease aside. I was being silly, letting an old woman's ramblings get to me. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong with this place. The power would flicker at odd hours, plunging the house into darkness. And in those moments of pitch black, I'd hear things, creaks and groans that weren't just old house sounds, footsteps from somewhere above me. But there was no attic, no second floor. I checked every inch of the ceiling. No access hatch, no pull-down ladder, nothing. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to repaint the living room, anything to distract myself from the sounds. As I was removing an old wall panel, something fluttered to the floor. A photograph, its edges charred and curled. My hands shook as I picked it up. It showed a family of 3, mother, father, little girl. They were smiling, standing in front of a house that looked eerily like mine. And there, in faded ink on the back, was a date, April 14th, 1965. I stumbled to the kitchen, my heart pounding. I needed a glass of water, needed to calm down. But as I reached for a glass, I noticed something inside the open cabinet door. Writing. No, not writing. A date, traced in what looked like soot or ash. April 14th, 1965. I slammed the cabinet shut and ran to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. I was imagining things, that was all. I'd been working too hard, not sleeping enough. I just needed rest. But sleep brought no relief. I began waking up to find my sheets covered in a fine layer of ash, smears of soot on my skin, and the floorboards. Oh God, the floorboards. Scorch marks would appear overnight, spreading like cancer across the wood. I was losing my mind. I had to be. Because the alternative was too horrifying to contemplate. I avoided the neighbors after that first day. But one morning, as I was hurrying to my car, Mrs. Abernathy cornered me. Her rheumy eyes darted around, making sure no one was listening. Then she leaned in close, her breath sour with fear. "You need to leave that house," she hissed. "It's not safe, it's not right." I tried to brush her off, but she gripped my arm with surprising strength. "Listen to me," she said. That house burned down decades ago. A family died. Mother, father, little girl, trapped inside. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But every few decades it comes back, lures someone in, and then... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I wish I could say I packed my bags and left that very day, but I didn't. Maybe it was shock or denial, or maybe the house itself had some hold on me by then. All I know is I stayed until that final night. I woke up choking, gasping for air. The bedroom was filled with thick, acrid smoke, but there were no flames, no heat, just suffocating, impossible smoke. I stumbled to the door, fumbling with the lock, but it wouldn't budge. The knob wouldn't even turn. Panic rising, I ran to the window. It took all my strength, but I managed to force it open. As I tumbled out onto the overgrown lawn, gulping in clean air, I turned back to look at the house, and it was gone. Where 93 Maple Street had stood just moments before, there was nothing but an empty lot. Weeds and tall grass, a few chunks of old foundation. No sign that a house had ever been there at all. I don't expect you to believe me. No one does. The police found no evidence of a fire or a house or anything. The property records show the lot's been empty for decades, but I know what I saw, what I lived through. And sometimes, late at night, I drive past that empty lot just to make sure. And every time, every single time, I see a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. A shadow where no shadow should be, the faintest outline of a house that doesn't exist. I don't know if it's waiting for me or for its next victim. All I know is whatever is there, whatever that thing is pretending to be a house, it's patient. It can wait. And sooner or later, it will be back. I still remember the chill that ran down my spine when I first laid eyes on room 313. It wasn't supposed to exist, you see, not according to any of the hotel's floor plans or booking systems. But there it was, waiting for me at the end of a long, dimly lit corridor. I had arrived in Pennsylvania late that evening, exhausted from a day of meetings and eager to collapse into bed. The Blackwood Hotel stood like a weathered sentinel on the outskirts of town, its Victorian architecture a stark contrast to the modern buildings surrounding it. As I approached the front desk, the night clerk's forced smile did little to mask his unease. "I'm sorry, sir, but it seems we've had an overbooking issue," he stammered, his eyes darting nervously to a dusty ledger. "The only room available is... well, it's not listed online. Room 313. I was too tired to argue. "That's fine," I muttered, reaching for the old brass key he hesitantly slid across the counter. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of the clerk exchanging a worried glance with the bellhop. "Sweet dreams," the bellhop called after me, his laugh a touch too high-pitched. "And don't mind any noises. Old pipes, you know." I should have known then, should have turned around and walked right out of that lobby. But fatigue clouded my judgment, and I found myself trudging up creaking stairs to the third floor. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before me, the faded wallpaper peeling at the edges like old scabs. Each step I took felt heavier than the last, as if the very air was trying to hold me back. When I finally reached room 313, the tarnished numbers glinted dully in the flickering overhead light. Inside, the room was a time capsule of faded elegance. Heavy velvet curtains, their deep crimson dulled by years of dust, framed windows that looked out onto nothing but inky blackness. The four-poster bed dominated the space, its once white linens now a sickly yellow. I tried to shake off the growing sense of unease as I prepared for bed, but as I lay there in the darkness, I couldn't escape the feeling that I wasn't alone. The silence was too thick, too expectant, and then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. At first I dismissed it as settling pipes or the wind, but the sound persisted, growing more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. It seemed to be coming from inside the walls themselves, accompanied by what sounded like whispers. Faint at first, but growing clearer with each passing moment. "Help me!" they seemed to say. "Find me!" I bolted upright, my heart pounding. Surely I was imagining things. I fumbled for the bedside lamp, desperate to dispel the darkness. As warm light flooded the room, my eyes were drawn to the ornate mirror hanging on the opposite wall. What I saw there will haunt me for the rest of my days. It was just for a moment, a fleeting glimpse. But in the mirror's reflection, I saw her. A woman, her skin as pale as moonlight, her wrists bound with fraying rope. Her lips moved silently, forming words I couldn't understand. And then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. Sleep eluded me that night. I paced the room, convinced I was losing my mind. As dawn's first light began to seep through the curtains, I noticed something I had missed before. A faint outline in the wallpaper, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. With trembling hands, I peeled back the paper, revealing a hidden door. It creaked open reluctantly, as if it hadn't been used in decades. Beyond lay a narrow staircase, descending into darkness. The steps were coated in a thick layer of dust, undisturbed save for a single set of small footprints leading down. I shouldn't have followed them. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get as far away from this cursed place as possible, but something compelled me forward, drawing me deeper into the hotel's dark secrets. The staircase ended abruptly, blocked by a crude brick wall, but there, scratched into the mortar, was a message. Elizabeth Blackwood, 1904. He will pay. With growing horror, I pieced together the fragments of a long-buried crime. Elizabeth Blackwood, a guest at the hotel in 1904, murdered by an employee. Her body never found, the case hushed up by the hotel's powerful owners. I fled back to my room, my mind reeling. As I frantically packed my belongings, determined to check out immediately, a yellowed newspaper clipping fluttered from between the pages of the bedside Bible. My blood ran cold as I read the headline, "Hotel Heiress Missing, Foul Play Suspected." The article detailed the disappearance of Elizabeth Blackwood, last seen arguing with a hotel porter. But it was the accompanying photograph that made my heart stop. The hotel manager quoted in the piece, the one who vehemently denied any wrongdoing. He was the spitting image of my great-grandfather. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My family's wealth, our standing in the community, it was all built on a foundation of lies and murder. We had profited from Elizabeth's death for generations, while her spirit remained trapped, seeking justice. As if sensing my discovery, the room around me began to change. The temperature plummeted, my breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. The whispers returned, no longer pleading but filled with rage. The mirror shattered, shards of glass exploding outward. I ran, blind with terror, down the hallway and stairs, but each door I tried was locked, trapping me inside. In my panic, I didn't notice the figure materializing behind me until it was too late. Cold, ethereal fingers wrapped around my throat as Elizabeth's spirit forced me to look into her hollow eyes. "You will set this right," she hissed, her voice like wind through dead leaves. "Or you will join me." I don't remember much after that. I woke up in the hotel lobby, surrounded by concerned staff and flashing police lights. They told me I had been found wandering the streets in the early hours of the morning, babbling incoherently about hidden rooms and family secrets. I've tried to forget that night, to convince myself it was all a vivid nightmare brought on by stress and an overactive imagination. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection in a mirror, I swear I can see her standing behind me, her eyes filled with a terrible knowing, her lips forming those same silent words. "Find me, set me free." And I know deep in my bones that one day I'll have to return to room 313, to face the truth of what my family did, and to finally give Elizabeth the peace she's been denied for over a century. But until then, I'll carry this burden of knowledge and the weight of her unrestful spirit and wherever I go. So if you ever find yourself at the Blackwood Hotel and they offer you a room that's not on the map, I beg you, turn around and walk away. Some secrets are better left buried, and some ghosts should remain undisturbed. Because once you've glimpsed the truth behind room 313, you'll never be the same again. The whispers started on my third night. At first, I thought it was just the wind whistling through the empty halls of Oakwood High. But wind doesn't call your name. I never should have taken that night shift custodial job. The extra cash seemed worth it at the time. God knows I needed it. But now I'd give anything to forget what happened in those dark, half-renovated corridors. It was supposed to be simple. Clock in at 10 p.m., mop the floors, take out the trash, and be gone before sunrise. The school had been mostly abandoned for months as they slowly gutted the place. Just me and the shadows. At least, that's what I told myself. The first couple nights were quiet, almost peaceful, really. There's something oddly comforting about an empty school at night. The squeak of my mop bucket echoing off lockers, moonlight filtering through dusty windows. It felt like being suspended in time. But on that third night, everything changed. I was wiping down the trophy cases near the gym when I heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible, drifting down the hallway. I froze, straining to listen. It sounded like, "My name?" I shook it off. Lack of sleep playing tricks on me, that's all. I tried to focus on my work, but the whispers kept coming. Sometimes right behind me, sometimes far away. Always just on the edge of hearing. By the fourth night, I was on edge. Every shadow seemed to move. Every creak of the old building sent shivers down my spine. But it was the lockers that really got to me, row after row of dented metal stretching into darkness. And one in particular, Locker 146, gave me the creeps. I noticed it that night as I was mopping nearby. The area around it felt colder somehow, like stepping into a freezer. When I tried to open it, the key wouldn't even fit properly. It was probably just jammed, but something about it felt wrong. A week went by. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I started taking longer routes to avoid that hallway, but I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. Then came the night I heard the knocking. I was emptying trash cans when a sharp rap, rap, rap echoed through the empty hall. My blood ran cold as I realized where it was coming from. Locker 146. I approached slowly, heart pounding. The knocking came again, more urgent this time. With trembling hands, I tried the key. It still wouldn't budge. I yanked on the handle, but it was sealed tight. Silence fell. I pressed my ear to the cold metal, holding my breath. Nothing. I practically ran from the building that night. The next day, I couldn't shake the memory. I had to know more. On my lunch break, I snuck into the school's records room. Most of the files had been boxed up for the renovation, but I managed to find some old incident reports. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. In 1982, a student named Jeremy Keller vanished without a trace. The last place he was seen, standing in front of Locker 146. I dug deeper, piecing together the story. Jeremy was a quiet kid, kind of a loner. There were rumors of bullying, but nothing concrete. One day he just disappeared. No body was ever found. The case went cold. That night at work, I couldn't stop thinking about Jeremy. Had he somehow gotten trapped in that locker? Was his spirit still there, crying out for help? The thought made me sick. I knew I had to open it. I grabbed a crowbar from the maintenance closet and made my way to the locker. The hallway seemed darker than usual, the shadows deeper. As I approached, that familiar chill crept over me. The metal groaned as I pried at the door. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cold. With a final heave, the locker burst open. The stench hit me first, musty and damp, with an underlying sweetness that turned my stomach. Then I saw it, an old, battered notebook. The pages were warped and stained with something dark. Hands shaking, I opened the cover. Written in faded ink on the first page, "I'm still here." I stumbled back, the notebook falling from my hands. This couldn't be real. It had to be some sick joke. But as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of movement in the security mirror at the end of the hall. A pale figure stood behind me, mouth moving as if speaking, but when I whirled around, I was alone. The next day, I asked to see the security footage from the night before. My blood ran cold as I watched myself on the grainy screen, apparently talking animatedly to thin air. I was losing my mind. I had to be, but I couldn't let it go. I started digging into old yearbooks, newspaper clippings, anything I could find about Jeremy Keller. The yearbooks were the worst. In every single copy, Jeremy's face had been scratched out. Not just from his own photo, but from every group shot, every candid. It was like someone was trying to erase him completely. I tracked down some teachers who had worked at Oakwood back then. Most refused to talk about it. Those who did spoke in whispers, their eyes darting around as if afraid of being overheard. They told me to let sleeping dogs lie, to forget I'd ever heard the name Jeremy Keller. But I couldn't. The whispers grew louder each night. Cold spots appeared throughout the school. I'd catch glimpses of a figure in Oakwood's faded Letterman jacket, always just out of the corner of my eye. It all came to a head one night in the gym. I was replacing some burnt-out bulbs when the remaining lights began to flicker. In the stuttering darkness, I saw him. Jeremy stood at center court, pale and gaunt, with dark stains on his Oakwood '82 jacket. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with a sadness I can't describe. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. I ran until my lungs burned, out of the school and into the night. I never went back. I quit the next day, citing health reasons. But I can't escape what happened. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see Jeremy's face. And in the quiet moments before sleep, I swear I hear his voice, a ghostly whisper carried on the night wind. Don't leave me in the dark again. I don't know what really happened to Jeremy Keller all those years ago. Maybe I never will. But I know what I saw in those haunted halls of Oakwood High. And I know that some secrets refuse to stay buried. So if you're ever walking past an old school late at night and you hear whispers on the wind, don't ignore them. Someone might be trying to tell you something. Just be careful what you uncover, because once you open that door, you can never truly close it again.